This podcast is a work of historical interpretation. While we strive for accuracy, some aspects of history are open to interpretation and debate. Thank you for listening. Maybe you're not allowed to talk.
Why am I not allowed to talk?
That was not a funny joke.
You didn't even say what the episode was about yet to anybody, so who knows if they know if it's a funny joke or not.
Okay.
I didn't even remember my headphones.
What?
So I'm going to use these ones.
Welcome to Time Tellers, where we explore history's most pivotal and challenging moments. Today we're delving into one of the darkest chapters of one of the darkest time periods of American history. So one of the darkest chapters of the Vietnam War, which by itself has a lot of dark chapters.
Like the entire thing?
The entire thing.
Yeah, I'm just going to not talk.
No, you are allowed to talk. I just realized I need to check something really quickly because...
Well, remember, we're on a time crunch.
I know.
No, I was just saying.
The My Lai Massacre is what we are talking about today. The My Lai Massacre was a horrifying event that exposed the brutal realities of the war, deeply shocking the American public and the world. We'll uncover the events that led up to it, the massacre itself, and the aftermath, and of course the legacy it left behind. Just to put this out here, I have no military experience, nor do I have any close family members who have served. I don't think any of my close friends have served. So I literally have no relevant personal experience with the military. What about you?
I know people and relatives.
Have served.
Yes.
Or are serving? Currently serving? Or past?
Yeah, currently.
Yeah, I mean, my dad would have been that era, but did not serve in Vietnam. I think just...
Yeah, my dad would have,
out.
but because of his vision, they wouldn't let him.
Yeah, like all my uncles had numbers. What do they call them?
Draft cards.
Draft card numbers. But, well, I believe two of my uncles served in the National Guard. And all of my uncles went to college, including my dad during that time period, which also kept them out, at least temporarily. So, that being said, that's this episode.
Yeah, but it's not on calendar.
I know. I need to put it on there. So that being said, I do honor those who have served bravely, and this is no reflection on the good, honest soldiers who have served our country. And some of them have, of course, given their lives for our country. The Vietnam War was a complicated and divisive conflict, profoundly affecting both the Vietnamese population and the American soldiers that fought in the war. Among the factors driving U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War, the containment policy, the domino theory, and the Gulf of Tonkin incident stand out as the most important for the understanding of the escalation of American engagement in Vietnam. These three factors drove the U.S. involvement. The containment policy was the cornerstone of U.S. foreign policy during the Cold War. It provided the ideological framework aiming to prevent the global spread of communism and countered the influence of the Soviet Union and China. The domino theory added strategic urgency, positioning that the fall of Vietnam to communism would trigger a chain reaction in the Southeast Asia, threatening regional stability and U.S. interest in that area. Finally, the Gulf of Tonkin incident acted as the immediate catalyst for escalation, giving then-President Lyndon B. Johnson the political leverage to increase military involvement without a formal declaration of war. These factors intervened to justify and intensify America's commitment to the Vietnam conflict. I guess I didn't even realize, we weren't even in an officially declared war for Vietnam.
Well, if there's no actual declared state of war, do the rules of war apply?
Ooh, I see what you're saying, yeah. So by the late 1960s, the U.S. had been heavily involved in Vietnam for over a decade, initially supporting the South Vietnamese government against the communist Viet Cong, the North Vietnamese forces. During the 1960s specifically, over 1.5 million U.S. troops were sent to Vietnam in varying capacities, including combat, support, and advisory roles. The war became increasingly brutal and frustrating for American troops, who faced a formidable enemy adept at guerrilla tactics, making it hard to distinguish between civilians and combatants.
Is it guerrilla or gorilla?
I said guerrilla.
Yes, but you want to clarify for our listeners what
Oh, yes. We are not talking about the apes. We are talking about Guerrilla. Guerrilla warfare is a form of irregular warfare in which small groups of combatants, such as armed civilians or paramilitary forces, use tactics like ambushes, sabotage, hit-and-run attacks, and mobility to fight a more significant, more traditional military force. It often relies on knowledge of local terrain and support from the local population. Another example of this would be the American rebels using this method against the British Redcoats in the Revolutionary War, or some of the resistance fighters during World War II in Germany and France.
So like Mel Gibson in that movie?
That was historically accurate, not, but...
Sure it was.
I mean, he played a real character from history. Morale was low and soldiers were under extreme stress, with growing resentment fueled by rising casualties, ambiguous military objectives, and a lack of apparent progress. The Vietnam War deeply divided Americans, creating a rift between those who supported U.S. involvement, often citing the need to stop the spread of communists, known as hawks, and those who opposed it, condemning the war as unnecessary, immoral, or unwinnable, known as doves. This divide was reflected in mass protest, counterculture movements, and tensions between younger generations, who are more likely to oppose the war, and older, more conservative Americans. The draft further fueled dissent, as many viewed it as disproportionately targeting the working class and minorities, exacerbating social and political tensions. So let's talk about Charlie Company, because this is who is involved in the My Lai Massacre. Charlie Company, 1st Battalion, 20th Infantry Regiment of the American Division, was deployed to Vietnam in late 1967 and organized with approximately 160 soldiers. This structure included 5 platoons, 3 rifle platoons, 1 weapon platoon, and 1 headquarters platoon. After months of being attacked by snipers, booby traps, and ambushes, they were exhausted, demoralized, and increasingly resentful of the local population, whom they'd often viewed as potential Viet Cong sympathizers. On March 16, 1968, intelligence suggested that the My Lai, which was a hamlet in the Quang Ngai province, was a stronghold of the Viet Cong. Troops were briefed to expect heavy resistance and were ordered to destroy the village, supposedly to eliminate enemy forces. So this is our situation. This is the setup of what's going to happen.
Sounds like a setup.
It does sound like a setup. So this is their acting on intelligence that they were receiving, and they were ordered to destroy the village. When Charlie Company arrived in My Lai, they expected a fierce firefight. Instead, they encountered mostly unarmed villagers, many of whom were children and women, and the elderly. Not saying they can't fight, but probably...
Well,
despite the absence of armed resistance, the soldiers, led by Lieutenant William Calley, began to kill civilians indiscriminately. Over 4 hours, between 347 and 504 villagers were murdered, many executed at point-blank range. These are American soldiers doing this. Some soldiers raped women and girls before killing them. Others mutilated bodies, and entire families were killed, including children and infants, because they are so dangerous, she says sarcastically.
they could grow up to be free thinkers.
True. Lieutenant Calley played a central role directly ordering the killing of villagers, he was later seen personally shooting people, including a group of villagers gathered in a ditch. This has remnants, echoes of the SA troops, or SS troops, can't remember which one it was, going through shooting Jews before the concentration system was established in Germany. Not all soldiers participated in the killings. Some refused to shoot, and a few, like Hugh Thompson, a helicopter pilot, tried to intervene. Thompson landed his helicopter between American soldiers and fleeing villagers, threatening to fire on his own troops if they continued to attack civilians. He also helped rescue several civilians by airlifting them to safety. He would also go on to testify about events later.
Did he get a pardon? Or the other ones? I couldn't remember if he got lumped in with all of that or not.
Thompson doesn't get charges.
Okay, I couldn't remember. I know there were some people that got screwed in that whole thing, too.
Right. After the massacre, efforts were made by the U.S. Army to cover up the event. Initial reports falsely described the incident as a victory against Viet Cong fighters, claiming only 128 enemy, quote-unquote, deaths. So, let's see. How did they cover it up? Initially, the Army claimed the operation was a success, again stating the 128 Viet Cong fighters were killed with no mentions of civilians. We're just going to gloss over that, right? So, false reports. Senior officers misreported events, and the military ignored complaints from whistleblowers. Photos showing the massacre were hidden until they were leaked later, so hiding the evidence. Soldiers like Hugh Thompson Jr., who tried to stop the killing, faced backlash, and reports from others were dismissed or ignored, again silencing those whistleblowers. The Army avoided looking into the massacre until journalists and whistleblowers exposed it over a year later. Because rumors and accounts from soldiers began to spread, particularly due to reports from Ron Ridenour, a soldier who had heard details from witnesses and initiated a campaign to expose the truth. The My Lai Massacre came to light over a year later, igniting outrage across the globe. The failed cover-up fueled anti-war sentiment and damaged trust in the government, as cover-ups do. The cover-up highlighted how the government prioritized its image over accountability, further undermining the support for the Vietnam War. They knew that it was already not a very supported war, so they didn't want something like this. It's bad PR. That whole, there's no such thing as bad press isn't really true.
Yeah.
Especially in situations like this. For good reason. So, investigative journalist Seymour Hersh broke the story to the public in November of 1969, revealing the full horror of the massacre and the attempted cover-up. Photographs taken by Ronald Haberle, an Army photographer who witnessed the massacre, were published in Life magazine, adding visual proof to the shocking reports, because you gotta have that visual, especially, this is modern day, sort of.
Picture it didn't happen.
Right. Yeah, this is pre-social media, this is pre-the internet, this is pre-news 24/7. Very pre all of that.
There was the radio and TV.
There was TV. Yeah. And the radio. That was pretty much it.
Newspapers.
That was,
quick.
Magazines.
Yeah.
Yeah. The My Lai Incident Subcommittee was chaired by Representative F. Edward Hubert and was there to make an assessment of the My Lai incident independent of the Army's ongoing investigation. This special subcommittee conducted hearings from April 15th to June 22nd, 1970, to investigate the events of March 16th, 1968. It focused on military policies, orders, and directives regarding the treatment of civilians in the investigation of alleged civilian casualties. The subcommittee concluded that, quote, responsible officers of the Americal divisions and 11th Brigade failed to make adequate, timely investigation and report of the My Lai allegations, unquote. and that the My Lai matter was, quote, covered up within the Americal Division and by the district and province advisory teams, unquote. So, in other words, they concluded that, yeah, nobody looked into these allegations that were brought to the army, and they actively tried to cover up the whole thing.
Shocker.
Yeah. Surprise. So, Lieutenant William Calley was the only soldier court-martialed for his role. In 1971, he was found guilty of premeditated murder. Premeditated. That's not fooling around. And sentenced to life imprisonment. His sentence was later reduced to 20 years, and he ultimately served only 3.5 years under house arrest.
So got away with it. Got it.
Basically. President Richard Nixon commuted Lieutenant William Calley's sentence, following widespread public controversy and pressure. He ordered Calley to be released from prison and placed under house arrest while his appeal was being reviewed. Ultimately, Calley's sentence was reduced to 10 years, ended up being that he served the 3.5 years under house arrest before being paroled. Nixon's decision to commute the sentence was seen as many as a political move to appease a deeply divided public. I mean, the revelations about the My Lai Massacre caused outrage and further eroded public support for the Vietnam War. Many Americans were horrified by the brutality of U.S. soldiers, while others were angered by the perceived scapegoating of Calley and the lack of broader accountability. Because he was the only one court-martialed.
Huh?
And I feel like he was following orders too, right?
Yeah, I mean, they were just
I'm not
following
saying
orders.
he's without fault, but I do feel like there's probably a few other people that should have been held accountable.
Yeah, well.
The massacre became a symbol of the moral corruption of the war, intensifying calls for its end, and increasing the anti-war movement's momentum. I mean, this would have been a very interesting time period to live through.
Yeah?
I mean, not necessarily interesting in a good way, but the My Lai Massacre had lasting implications for the U.S. military, American society, and Vietnam. Some changes in military policy were as follows.
Oh boy, that sounds like you have a list.
I do, actually. But it included implementation of stronger rules regarding the treatment of civilians and conduct of soldiers during wartime. So some of these key changes were stricter rules of engagement. Soldiers had to confirm that targets were combatants and avoid harming civilians. What?
Was this pre-Geneva Convention or after?
After.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
That's why I kind of just said that.
Okay.
So why would this even have to be brought up?
I don't know. There was ethics training, programs that taught soldiers about the laws of war and the proper treatment of civilians.
So,
don't shoot them.
Yeah, so ignore the Geneva Convention again.
Leaders were held responsible for the actions of their troops and were required to report war crimes just after, though, not actually for this incident, it seems, though.
Yeah.
But, yeah. It's like they're mandated reporters, which if you are having to deal with anything with children, you know what I mean by mandated reporters.
Yep. I filled out that paper once.
Yeah. It's all online now. You can get it online. Operations, and future operations, I should say, included measures to minimize civilian casualties and assess impacts. Stronger processes were established to investigate misconduct and civilian harms after any incidents that happened, and greater media access and documentation, ensuring the accountability and public trust. Because I think part of the thing was a lot of Vietnam was kept under wraps because it didn't look good. So they didn't want the media getting these pictures of the dead soldiers and the like just normal coming back home, the caskets, that's the word I was looking for. That they weren't allowed to be at the Air Force bases when these caskets would come home. They didn't want those photos. No, but For many Vietnam veterans, the massacre left a legacy of shame and psychological trauma. Some soldiers who participated in or witnessed the event struggled with PTSD, guilt, and moral injury. In Vietnam, the massacre deepened resentment and trauma among survivors, impacting the local community for generations. Today, My Lai is home to a memorial site and museum dedicated to the victims, serving as a reminder of the horrors of war and awful things human beings can do to each other. In the years since the massacre, there have been efforts to reconcile with the past. In 1998, Hugh Thompson and his crew received the Soldier's Medal for their actions in stopping the killings. The massacre remains a focal point in discussions about war ethics. Talk about an oxymoron. Civilian protection and the psychological impact of combat, serving as a stark reminder of the potential for atrocity in war, although I could argue that war itself is an atrocity.
Yeah.
And so Hugh probably would have received his Soldier's Medal, maybe possibly from President Clinton, who would have been president at the time.
Yeah,
a lot of those awards are. I could be wrong, but...
Or they could just be from...
the highest military.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I meant to look that up and I forgot. Because technically the president is the highest military.
Yeah, or like the chairman of the Joint Chiefs
right.
or whatever.
I'm not sure who gave him that award. But it's often the president, so that could be a good educated guess.
Yeah.
Without looking it up real quick.
Because you don't have time to look it up.
I know. But the My Lai Massacre stands as one of the darkest moments in American military history, symbolizing the ethical challenges and brutal realities of the Vietnam War. The story of My Lai is not just about a single horrific event, although it was that, but also about the consequences of war, the complexities of human nature. That's a nice way of putting that.
Yeah.
And the ongoing struggle to uphold moral values in the heat of battle. It serves as a painful reminder of what happens when accountability and humanity are lost in the fog of war. As I said earlier, I have no military experience. I've never been in war or in combat. That's all for this episode of Time Tellers. If you found this story meaningful, although maybe not pleasant, of course, please follow, give us a like, share, give us a comment, 5-star review. Even if you write, you guys are the worst ever. Just kidding. But we do appreciate
if
that.
That's your opinion, tell it.
Yeah, I mean, hey.
You're allowed to say that.
Yes. You are allowed to say that.
Nobody can tell you what to say.
Just say something and give us that 5-star. It really helps us.
But don't
apparently.
actually just say something.
Well, if they write the word something, that's okay.
No, because then we'll get sued by the Beatles.
What? That's a Beatles song? Wait.
Yes.
You mean, like, their descendants?
Maybe. Or whoever still owns all their music.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, they have a song called Something.
Okay, yeah, but they don't own the rights to the word.
I don't know. I mean,
I don't think
didn't
so.
Taylor Swift try to copyright Shake It Off?
The phrase shake it off, yes.
Yeah.
That's the phrase altogether. Don't mess with my Swift. No.
Not much to mess with. Yeah.
Join us next time as we uncover another pivotal moment in American history. Hopefully one that is a little more upbeat. No, wait, February's coming up. I know we got the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, so...
Yay! Yay for Prohibition.
Right? That is one of the next ones coming up.
Drinking is bad.
As he drinks
It's empty.
a hard seltzer.
It's empty.
Because you drink it, all right. It's the manufacturing that's bad. It's not the drinking.
That's true.
So, Prohibition.
Kind of like the musical Speakeasy Seas coming soon.
We're also going to be doing an episode on this 688. Oh, did I say that correctly? Troop during World War II? Yes, 6888. Yep. So those are the upcoming St. Valentine's Day Massacre and the 6888. And I don't know what else. We'll see from there.
Yeah.
But this episode should come out January 28th. Right?
I don't know. The calendar's blank for that day.
Do you want me to write it down?
Yeah, write it down.
Oh my goodness.
Can you use a Sharpie so we know it's fact?
That was funny. So this is going to be season 2, episode 5.
Yeah. Are we going to do another mini too, just because we keep throwing those out
Probably
all the
not.
time?
Probably not. I think we had 3 minis for this month. That's probably enough.
3 minis, yeah, you deserve more full ones.
The only one that was really a mini was one that came out on the 20th. The other ones were significantly longer than a typical Tiny Tellers episode.
Yeah. Some of them have been really long lately.
Anyways.
I mean, well, Homestead wasn't that one. Wright Brothers was a long one.
Yes, well, I knew Wright Brothers was going to be a long one. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your January, and we will see you in February.
We will? Or is that when we're going video?
No.
Live stream?
I meant
You said
theoretically.
see.
No. Nobody
said
needs to
see.
see this.
I have to.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm nobody now?
He said it, not me.
You're a
Don't
crispy
you have
treat.
somewhere to be?
Not for another, 5 minutes.
Oh my gosh. I'm gonna let everyone know that you're clowning off instead of getting to rehearsal.
You mean final dress rehearsal?
It's a final dress rehearsal? Yeah, it is. Fun. Wait, are you wearing a costume? I remember the email now. Are you wearing a costume?
No, because of where I'm sitting.
Oh.
I was told I didn't have to.
Are you, so you're not seen from the audience?
There's 6 seats that can see me.
Oh.
You'd have to be.
I'm gonna call and request that you wear a costume.
You'd have to be in the very front row, like on the far end against the wall.
I'm gonna call and request they put you better on stage. I want you front and center. No, I'm just kidding.
Did you just? Never mind. I'm not saying that.
Okay, y'all. I'm gonna hang up now.
Eat your Rice Krispie treat.
I will once I hang up. I'm not eating it on air.
Yeah, we have to charge extra for that.
Okay, see, here, you guys will hear us next week.
That's the Patreon exclusive. Oh wait, no, that's not Patreon. That's what's that other site
Oh my
called?
gosh.
Which one is it? There's like 4 I'm
saying
thinking.
it. I'm not saying it. You're not getting me to say it. Bye!